Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. David Gouthro back with another episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. And today I have the pleasure of having Helen Roberts as my guest. Welcome, Helen.
Hello, David. Thanks for inviting me.
So, Helen, the last time we were actually face-to-face was quite a few years ago, and you were so busy. And then at some point, you took a break. And so, I'd love to just explore, how that came about, how you knew when it was time to take a break and what you did and what the heck you're doing now. So maybe you could just say a little bit about what you were doing before you decided to take the break and what were sort of the triggers for deciding that a break was something that you had to take.
What I was doing before the break was working for Providence Healthcare as an organizational development leader. And the idea was that I was helping teams and individuals by coaching, team coaching, doing all kinds of organizational development work inside the healthcare system at the same time as running my own business, doing the same work in all kinds of other organizations. So it was a pretty packed time. And I think how I knew it was time to take a break was I actually, those commercials that were, at 55, 55?
Yes.
I bought the Kool-Aid and I was like, I'm putting it 55. I don't care what happens. Just and so what happened was my husband and I had this sort of, so what are we going to do after you quit? Like, what's the plan? And he said, I'd like to go sailing for a couple of years. And I was like, that sounds like a good idea. So we it did sound like a good idea. And then we started the execution and then we realized, oh my God, because we had to sell everything. We had to pack everything up. We had to put it all, basically get rid of our life and live on a boat, which we did in downtown Vancouver the last couple of years I was working, which was pretty awesome. I could walk to work, which was way better than the hour and a half commute, and kind of eased into the life. And then the boat that we were living on was the one we decided to go offshore with. So we went offshore.
So I want to go back to a sec because you said what you did, you used the word quit rather than retire. And was that conscious or what?
No.
Is that
it felt like quitting, but
okay.
I used the word retire, certainly, so that I could get my benefits.
Oh.
And it was all like around retirement, but it did feel like I was done with that kind of that phase of my life, but I didn't know what was going to happen next. I did know I loved what I did. The freelance part, I didn't quit. I just quit the work,
So
working for somebody else. Yeah.
So at some point did you continue to work for PHSA when you were living on the boat?
PHC.
Oh,
And
PHC, sorry. Providence Healthcare.
And I did, for 2 years. So I would walk from Granville Island over the bridge to St. Paul's and near St. Paul's because we were evicted, and then back out. Fair enough. I mean, patients needed room. Yeah.
Okay, and then at what point, like what was when you decided to cast off? You just we're heading out of here now.
Well, really, it was all about as soon as I quit, we went. So I think there was about 5 weeks between my ending. So the whole time I was ending, Jean was preparing the boat and getting her ready, and doing all the major pieces of work that needed to be done to get the boat whipped into shape while I was still working, so that very quickly we could just depart. So we headed off to San Francisco at the end of August, and I think I quit in July or something.
So now you just said, like, we just headed off to San Francisco. Like, that's not like getting on a plane and heading down to San Francisco or taking a train or something like that. What's involved in getting a boat from Vancouver to San Francisco? Because I suspect it takes a little more than a couple of hours.
Yeah, most of your savings, you could start there. And then, what you actually do is, we ended up hiring, somebody called a passage planner, and that person, planned our whole passage, uh, with the weather in mind. So
Okay.
we hung out at the end of the Strait of Juan de Fuca in a little place called Nia Bay, which is on the American side. And then, when that guy said, "Jump," we jumped. And then you go, and, we were the winds were weird. I remember it was very lumpy, but not much wind, so we got kind of, you know, bounced around, but it was certainly not a life-threatening, challenging sail. It was more just, ugh, noisy, really noisy.
Now,
Yeah.
like I'm not a sailor, I'll ask some questions that may sound kind of dumb, but how
Good.
far out from shore are you? Like, can you see shore? Are you just kind of going a couple of
No.
hundred yards,
No.
or
No, 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 no. Yeah, you what we did was we went I think we tried to go out around 200 miles offshore all
oh
the way
wow,
down because the shipping lanes are about I can't remember, they're like it's 100, something miles
Mm,
out,
mm.
and you don't wanna mess with the freighters, so we wanted to get, away from that, and we also wanted to get away from most of the inshore fishing, because there's a lot of crab trapping and stuff like
Mm.
that, so you wanna make sure you don't end up in a field full of mooring balls when you're going along at 6 knots because they can wrap around your bits.
So now, had you done ocean sailing before? Like, or no, we just had a boat in
No.
Gravel Island. That's the first time we actually went like 200 kilometers out. It's like, yikes.
Well, sort of. We did go around the island, so we had a sense of what it was like being around the back of the island, and then we also joined a group that's pretty amazing called Blue Water Cruising Association, and they are people who've done this, and so you hang out for us, it was, like, 3 years with people that uh, either have actively gone offshore or, are planning on it, and you together learn, and there's all kinds of seminars and
Oh,
things to do
wow.
with that. So, yeah, it was pretty neat, actually. So we were really prepared, and then we did do with that organization a day out and a day back. So you just kinda sail out to a point. Everybody's supposed to go to the point and then turn around and come back. So we did that off Vancouver Island, and that was also a bust. There was almost no wind, and so after a while, we all just went, "This is stupid," and turned around, became so we didn't really have much experience. Like, the first real sailing we did was when we left Mexico, maybe?
Oh,
When we like, because we were motoring an awful no, no, between San Diego and Mexico, we did some decent sailing there, but that was weird because we ended up in a flotilla of 200 boats that were heading down to from San Diego to Mexico altogether. And,
wow.
we just happened to be stuck in that flotilla by accident because I broke my foot, and as a result of breaking my ankle. Yeah, it was challenging. So so I had a cast on and we're or boots, and we are doing this big sail, and then in the middle of the night, there's all these boats all over the place, and yeah, it was pretty rock and roll.
Wow.
That was fun.
And so then from Mexico, sorry, let me just back up again. So how long were you on this big ocean adventure before you came back to BC?
4 years. So
4 years.
we ended up going, from Mexico. We spent the winter in Mexico getting a boat ready again, and then, more money, and then kept going, west, and so west and south. So we ended up in French Polynesia, and then we just kept going. So we went to places like Fiji, we spent a lot of time there, and Vanuatu, which I am super impressed with. Those people are so resilient and tough and care about the environment. I just love them. And then we ended up in New Zealand and we got stuck there for the pandemic. So that was actually awesome. So yeah, it was a pretty amazing.
Wow. So, well,
Mhm.
one of my colleagues, he took his family sailing for a year. And I remember him talking about some of the changes that had come about in them.
Mhm.
I would imagine that on a trip like that, be very surprised if you weren't somehow changed or thought differently as a result of that. And I'm curious
Oh
if
yeah.
that's so. And so, what's
Mhm.
come out of that in terms of how you think about how you look at the world now, Helen?
I think the biggest change is it's I know I need to do something meaningful in the world. Like that was not meaningful enough for
Mm,
me. And I felt like uh only partially engaged because I wasn't engaged doing what I feel like is important work in the world. But on the other hand, I was connecting on a really meaning, meaningful level in communities,
mm,
particularly two. So we were in Fiji for a long time and we were in New Zealand for a long time. And in both those communities, we got to know people
mm.
and we did, I did more kind of volunteer work where I was helping people get reading glasses
Oh,
in Fiji, and then in New Zealand, I started to do work with some not for profits for free because I couldn't
mm,
charge for my work, and ended up learning quite a bit about Maori culture in the process. So that was
wow.
really neat, and and then what I realized was that the work that I wanted to do had to do with nature and it had to do with our connection to nature, because that's the other thing that I really got was this deep, kind of profound respect for nature and
Mm,
what she could teach us and what we were doing to her, which was um, really causing her a great deal of pain and suffering. And so, like I would see, we went near the garbage patch. We weren't in
mm,
it, but we were near it, and we could see all this crap on the
mm.
water. Or you see these huge fishing freighters, and you're like, "Oh my God, there's no fish here. What are you actually catching?" And then islands that were, you know, feet, literally feet high. Like maybe 20 feet high, and you're thinking like once the poles melt,
Yeah.
they're going under. And, being in Fiji, they've actually donated some of their land to the people of Mauritius because they know that the people of Mauritius, many of them won't have homes.
Wow.
And so there's all this cooperation is happening in South Pacific about what we're doing to the environment. And so I really wanted to, whatever I did, bring the environment into my work because that really, I think,
Mm.
was the biggest change for me was just that much tighter and deeper connection with nature.
So, please tell me a little bit more about the nature of your work and how you integrate sort of the nature of your work. That's
I
sort of
know.
not a good.
It's okay. I went with it.
So what the heck do you do, and how do you bring nature into that, Helen?
Well, you know, the kind of work that I did before, in a way, isn't that dissimilar. But what I'm doing now is I'm bringing in things like uh, forest bathing, or I'm bringing in uh, meditations that have you go become part of the forest, or have a chat with nature, or I'm coaching people. I'm doing leadership coaching, and we're walking outside, and we use nature constantly in through metaphor. So the idea is to bring the wisdom of nature in. I'm actually going to be doing a session in a couple of weeks with the Coaching Climate Alliance. So I'm not the only one. There are dozens and dozens of us that are wanting to do this work in coaching, where we're uh, linking the inner development goals to, which is a whole other thing I could talk about in a minute, but we're linking one of them, which is courage, to
Mm,
nature. And the exercise is something that comes from Joanna Macy's work, which is all about healing ourselves inside so that we can be there outside. And she does it through our awareness of what's happening with nature and then bringing that into the day to day. So, so yeah, there's all kinds of layers.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned because I don't want to assume that people know what it means because I don't. So I think you said forest bathing. Did I hear that
Forest
correctly?
bathing. Yeah.
And what is that?
Well, it's actually very cool. I've only really just started tinkering it. So,
Mm,
proviso. But Uh, in Japan, this became a really big thing, quite some time ago, decades. And there is this idea, not idea, there's a practice that what you do is you go into the woods and you commune with the trees. And there are all kinds of different practices that you can do while you're in the woods. And there's one called like stone stethoscopes or something,
Mm.
where you actually hold a stone up to a tree and listen, and you can hear the tree. You
Wow.
can hear what's going on. There's um there's this one guided meditation I've done several times now where I ask people to, and you do this in the forest, it's more powerful, but you imagine you're also growing roots and your roots are melding with the roots around you and are drawn to a certain place in the forest. And then you answer questions,
Mm.
which either
Mm.
you want to answer or questions I would pose as a coach, knowing what's going on for you. And then see what advice nature would have for you. And then you come back and then we can debrief it. Right. And sometimes just being quiet in nature is enough. Right. So,
So
yeah.
I imagine there's, and I don't want to really speak of stereotypes, but an engineering mentality that might be a
Yeah.
little skeptical, right?
I
So,
wouldn't call it forest bathing.
yeah, yeah.
I would disguise it.
Well, because yeah, I guess that was my question. How do you get? So, do people come to you because they know that you embrace nature in your work, or do they come to you because you've got a reputation for being a good coach, and then you use nature as a medium for helping them
Yeah.
grow in whatever way they want to grow?
It's really interesting. It's probably the latter. And then what I do is I say to them, well, we have our intake session, I'll say, so, there's lots of ways we can do this, but one of the ways I like to do is nature coaching. And they go, ooh, what's
Mhm.
that? And really, I've never had anybody say, ew. They go, "Tell me more."
Mm.
And then you tell them, and what I do is I kinda go soft, and, I don't call it forest bathing. I would just say we'll just use, metaphors from nature as we go out, and, a lot of them are like, "Bring it on,"
Mhm.
you know? And if I can't get to them in person, I have clients that say, "Well, I wanna do it outside today, so,
Mm.
I'll go out, you go out," and they're telling me, right?
I
So, yeah, it's pretty cool, like, people are pumped about this, actually,
well,
surprisingly,
I'm guessing it's one of those things that once people have had a taste or a touch of it, they want more. It's kinda like,
I
if
think.
you've never tried it before, you're not really sure what you're gonna miss, but once you've experienced, it's kinda like, "Wow,
Yeah, yeah,
I want more of this. I wanna keep doing this."
yeah. I would say in groups, it's been the only time I've had issues with it has been in a group, and there's some people just don't get it. And so, like, one of them, we had them go into nature,
Mhm.
spend some time with this particular question, and come back with an object from nature that would represent what they were thinking about, and we were create a mandala of everybody's stuff.
Mhm.
And then we would just spend time debriefing the mandala. What does the mandala say? Some people just didn't even go on break.
So, Mandela, just I know what you mean. There may be other
Oh, a
people that
big
don't, so
circle of stuff. Yeah, a
okay.
big circle of stuff. Yeah, in the middle of the room.
Okay,
Big
thank you.
pile. Yeah.
And is your sense that they don't get it, or they've kinda come into it deciding that they're not gonna get it?
Yeah, the latter again.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what it is, some people are pretty divorced from nature. They live in a city, they live around the concrete. In a way, it's hard to imagine anybody living in BC that would feel that way, but yeah, there are. And because it's so great here, right? I don't know, the environment's so magical here. But oh, and I will say this: I went all the way across the Pacific. This is it. This is the best place.
Hmm.
Like, it's just it's amazing. Well, North New Zealand's pretty special, but this place is magic, right? And so yeah, it's sad, but I don't know why. I don't know why some people just aren't. And maybe I would say that's their own journey. Like, that there's probably some part of them that's cut off from the true essence of what it means to be human, which is that we're all interconnected, you know?
It's making me whenever I have these podcasts, reminds me of things that I've forgotten about or hadn't thought about for a
Mm,
while. And one I was down in I spent some time in Colorado
Mhm.
in just a place called the Nature Place. That was just literally out in nature. This fellow had bought a ton of property and had cattle on it, so it could never be developed. That he
Mm.
invested money so it wouldn't be developed. It's Pikes Peak in the distance. It's just incredible.
Nice.
I was about there for 3 or 4 days, and then I went to spent some time in Santa Fe, New Mexico,
Oh, I
which
love Santa
the
Fe.
desert is just it's magical.
Amazing. Yeah.
So the contrast came the next week. I was flying into some work in LA, and looking down,
It
and as far as you can see, it's just
Yep.
concrete. And I remember feeling actually ill, physically
Yep.
ill about
Yep.
what was going to be missed when I got there. But because I sometimes wonder if people haven't had the experience of it. Once again, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Like I walk in Lighthouse Park every morning before I come into the
Mm.
office. And if I don't,
Mhm.
it really feels that way. And
Mhm.
but it really is a pretty magical place that we're living in here for sure.
It is, and when we sold the boat, we moved into the forest. So I've gone from one extreme to the other, and yeah, I have that experience too, and I remember having a, uh, dislocation like that. I was actually canoeing on the North Saskatchewan River for 10 days, and there's nobody. Like, there were some pelicans and some fish. That's all I remember. And then I had to fly out to Toronto. That so in the same morning I left, I arrived that afternoon in Toronto, and, I actually really like Toronto, but it was just that idea that it's all city. It's all
Yeah.
concrete, it's all parking lots, it's all cars, and yeah, I had that exact same experience. I felt ill. The worst experience though, Sedona to, I was camping in Sedona, loved it, and then I had went to Las Vegas because we wanted to
Oh.
see a show. Oh my god. Oh my god. That was totally dislocating. I was like, ice everywhere.
Well, and for those that haven't been to Sedona, maybe just
Ugh.
a few words to describe it. Like, I think it's phenomenal, but you spent more time there. So, what are some words that you use to describe Sedona?
Um, mystical,
Hmm.
spiritual, art. It's like a gallery. It's like a walking, moving gallery. Every time you turn a corner, you're seeing a different sculpture. It's just incredible, and it's just these beautiful red rocks and these incredible formations. Just stunning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to be clear for folks that are trying to picture this, so Helen is not talking about art like pictures on a wall in a building. The
No.
landscape itself
Yeah,
is
yeah,
like art. It's so gorgeous.
yeah. It's
Huh.
it's like I felt the same way I would walking around an exquisite like the Parthenon or something, like,
Huh.
some exquisite building, except this has been exquisitely carved by nature. Yeah.
So, since we're on this thing about nature, like, I mean, it seems to me that nature, everything is getting so expensive these days, like to
Mhm.
buy things, all these different experiences. But nature seems to be one of those things that you don't require a lot of money to be able to
Mhm.
enjoy. Like even just walking on a golf course at night, before they turn on the sprinklers and things like that. There's so many ways to get out and just be in nature. And
Absolutely.
once you're there, it's free to look around, to take photos, to experience, to breathe.
Mhm.
My gosh.
Mhm. And to be. I think that's the key that I got out on the water. Like, when we were under the stars at night, and I was the only one up, and, you're not really steering the boat, thank God, the auto helm is doing that, so, you can just sit there and look at the stars, and they're so incredibly bright, and that's something that we don't see in the city. And again, just that sense of being the enormity of it and the power of it and the beauty of it, it's just incredible. And anytime we can get in that and really be, then it slows us down and it gives us an opportunity to put things in a different perspective.
So if someone was interested in growing personally, and
Mhm.
decide that want to try something a little bit different, do it in nature. What are some recommendations, some suggestions on how someone could start to do that if they chose to grow in a different way and use nature as their medium? And any thoughts come to mind on what you might suggest to try?
Well, I'm gonna be, cheat. There's a book called What Would Nature Do?
Oh, okay.
Which was probably the one that helped me put it more clearly into, "Oh, how I would do this," right? So that was really good, and I actually have a set of cards. This is like catnip for you, David.
Oh,
Cards, and it's called Cards for Life, and then each card has lessons from nature. And you can use these cards. So this one's synergy, and it talks about creating a greater whole where interests and goals are converging, allies can be identified. And then you would take that particular idea and play with it. So I found sometimes just tools like this are helpful.
so as you know, I'm moving out of my office and have to
You're
cut
not
down on
allowed
things, but
to
there may
buy
be room
anything.
for one more deck of cards.
I
What's it called?
know.
What's it
It's
called again?
called Cards for Life, and it's
Cards
this
for
guy
Life.
in Britain, and he has a whole enormous global network using these now, and he only started about 5 years ago. It's just
Cards for
taken off.
Life.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I
I'm hoping
really,
my
really
wife isn't listening to this particular
no.
podcast.
Yeah, okay. Well, just buy them before you air the podcast, and it'll just yeah.
Good point. Had them all
Yeah,
along. I was just playing
yeah,
along with
yeah.
Helen on
Ask
this
for
one.
forgiveness. Um,
Okay, that's good.
yeah.
That's a good start.
Yeah. And I think another thing that I would do, I think it's a great question. Another thing I would do is I'm a meditator. I've meditated for 20 years. Meditating outside
Hmm,
is pretty special. And sound meditation and touch meditation because you can feel the air,
hmm.
right? Or color form meditation is so much more powerful, I think, outside because there's this part of you that is really appreciating being present. A lot of people do walking meditation,
Mhm.
which is often outside. So that's another way just to be there with every step, to be on the earth and feel every step. So it's about being present because I think all this work, all my work comes back to okay, I'm using nature as a metaphor and
Hmm.
a real partner in helping myself and others be present.
You know
Yeah.
what? This another memory that's just been triggered for me. I
Mhm.
I was out. I think I was in the Prince Edward County or something like that in Ontario, in an area that was out in nature, and I just
Mhm.
I tried to expand like paying. I mean, with meditation, same sort of thing. Pay attention to the sounds around you and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And what I tried to do was just imagine being able to hear further out. So you can hear the
Nice.
noise that's around. You might hear some really loud birds, and then as start to
Mhm.
imagine listening further out, some other birds in the distance or something like that. And just the
Yep.
ability when you tune in, and it's almost like, adjusting your radar or something like that. You just become aware
Mhm.
of so much more, just like seeing, like looking at something with a soft glance or soft eyes, and then focusing in, or looking beyond where you can see. I just
Mhm.
after this podcast, I'm going outside. I've,
Good.
I've just decided. Yeah.
But what you just did was beautifully describe the idea of perspective,
Mm,
right? And how our perspective can shift. And so when we notice things that are physical, that were within our senses, we can do that with our imagination as well and our
mm,
cognitive brain. And so it's about knowing that like, one thing that I did today was dealing with a particular issue I have around scarcity,
mm,
and, instead of just running with it, which I normally would, or trying to problem solve it, which I normally would, I went inward and focused on the physical sensation, which is also nature, right? What's going on inside me is nature too, and became more familiar with that, and then with the help of someone who's helped coaching me actually moved it into a metaphor that allowed me to really appreciate what it was trying to do for me,
mm,
but also not be driven by it. So it's that shift in perspective that we can do when we tune into our own nature. So nature's not always out there, right? So that's another thing that's a big thing that I've been trying to do, I think,
mm.
since the the sail is the weaving of all these different threads, you know?
So, and I'll put some of this content in the program notes. But what kind of people come to you for coaching? Like if there's an avatar or demographic or psychographic or something like that, like who would be drawn to this, or not necessarily drawn to it because they may not realize they're drawn to it until after they experience it. But
Yeah.
is there kind of like yeah? How would
Well,
you
I have
describe the kind of people that benefit from working with you?
well, I like working with leaders. I like working with leaders who want to work with their teams. That's my preferred
Hmm.
client.
Hmm.
Um, Personally, I think anybody would like this. Any coachee would like this, but my target audience often is mid to senior level leadership in healthcare or in municipal environments because
Oh,
I worked a lot in municipalities as well in the past.
wow.
I have a penchant for Parks and Rec.
Yep. Seems to fit. Yeah.
They're great. Yeah, they're great, and they always go along with this stuff. They love it. And, yeah, it's but honestly, I think I talk to a lot of coaches that are doing similar work to me, and, there is no particular market. I find that, the people that are in the grip of the kind of, thinking that's got us into this global polycrisis are the ones that probably need it the most and probably are possibly the most resistant, but if they've come for coaching, they're open to a lot. So, I really think anyone that's wanting to really shift their perspective because 'cause they're acknowledging their perspective isn't working, this is a brilliant shift because it changes the ground. It doesn't make any assumptions that the ground they're walking on is the right ground,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Start from there. So I want to
Mhm.
circle back to something that you said earlier when you first started exploring this is when you quit. So,
Mhm.
what are some of the indicators that for people that maybe they could be aware of that let them know when it's time to quit? Because I think sometimes we just go rushing so fast we become mindless. We're not aware of what's going on around us. So, what are some tips or signals that maybe you really need to think about whether it's worthwhile carrying on the way you're carrying on, that maybe it's better to actually quit
Right.
and take a break.
Well, and it's interesting because I'm not sure I would always push people to quit. What
Mhm.
I would push people to do is rethink.
Okay.
So a lot of times I have people that say, I'm done with my job. We get to that place. They recognize that. And the first thing I talk about is, well, what do you love?
Mm,
What is it? Why did you take the job in the first place? So we really want to go deep into that. And then it's like, can you change it where you are? Can you change what it means? Now, if you can't and your values are being violated, get out. You know, find a way out. But for me, there's a lot of times people are in great they're doing great work, but they're tired because the system
mm,
is beating them up. And because it seems impossible to win and it seems impossible to make a difference. And then
mm,
when you change your perspective and you change the way you show up and you change the questions you ask and you change your behavior, all of a sudden that job that looked terrible isn't that
mm.
terrible, right?
It's, another memory that just triggered for me. I was getting on a small plane. I was flying I was flying up to Santa Fe from Albuquerque, and
Mhm.
this fellow was ushered onto the plane. A number of other people were helping him get up onto the plane, or at least just being there to support him, not physically. And where I ended up sitting beside him, and we just got to chatting. I was kind of like, I wasn't quite this blunt, but what do you do? He said, "Well, I'm
Mhm.
the Archbishop that serves. I think it was Colorado, New Mexico, or something like
Oh,
that."
wow. Yeah.
So I was asking about his job. Said, if I'm not Catholic, I don't know anything about like what the role of an archbishop is. What that's like, and it was very enlightening and also very sad because he said, I got into this sphere to serve God and serve the people who
Mhm.
follow in the same way that I do. And now mostly what I do is I go from diocese to diocese or whatever the grouping is, and
Mm.
just basically rubber stamp decisions that are made in these different places. And it's like I've totally lost touch of why I went into this for the first place. So I said, well,
Right.
how do you quit? How do you move on? What's next? He says, unfortunately, the only way out of this is to die or to be declared incompetent, right? And doing
Right.
damage. And I just felt so sad for him because the source of his passion, he was like all sort of in that same area, but not able to actually fulfill it. And
Yeah,
so,
but that's when the system kills us, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
that's actually one of my experiences is that the system is so frequently, what I'm experiencing is being experienced at the next level and the next level and the next level, right? And so, that whole idea of fractals. So what's happening here on
Mhm.
the micro level? So my story is he wasn't the only person that felt like he was just going through the ropes in the
Yeah.
Catholic Church. I bet you lots of people feel like they're going through the
Yep.
ropes in the Catholic Church, right? And how is that any different than a lot of people in middle management, senior management, right?
Yep.
It's like there's this expectation that we're going to meet our targets, that we're going to cut costs, that we're going to, like it's all the same crap. And it doesn't matter where you are. So it's like, how can you change your part of the system? What's the one thing you can do to change your part?
So I sometimes some of my clients talk about boundaries, the boundaries that we work within, and it could be structurally, personally. But there's some boundaries that are you must play within them, like legal boundaries, like you're not supposed to shoot people and things like that.
Yeah,
But there's
that's a good one.
but there, but there's other boundaries that you can play with. And I think
Mhm.
the problem is when we think that all of the boundaries are ones that we must play within where there's no options. And part
Right.
of it is saying, in this area where there are boundaries, what are some of the boundaries I can play with? And sometimes that could be my perspective, it could be the way I view things, the way I act. But the horrible feeling being trapped when there's no way out.
And a lot of the boundaries are ones we've made up.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like I was just working with my partner today, my work partner, and she told me that we had a contract with this client, and it was like, okay, if I 12 people or less, I'm going to do the work by myself. But if it gets up to 20, 18, 20, I'm going to bring in somebody else. And
Mhm.
then they said, yeah, that's all we've got in this group. Oh, and it's an easy group. There's no problems. And so we were like, oh, okay, all right. She gets in. It's hot and there are going to be 20 people. And I'm like, then you need to go back and renegotiate. And she's like, but I don't want to because I don't. And then I dug and dug and dug. And it was because she didn't want to be she didn't want to make trouble for her client. Right.
Right.
So here's a story. And then, of course, she went back and wrote a letter and, so we'll see what happens. But they've changed the contract. So that's the other thing that
Mhm.
happens when we're working. You know, we sign on for a deal and then the contract changes and then there's more work and more work and more work and more. So when do we say, no, I'm not doing any more work? Right. So yeah, it's really tricky,
And
really
that
tricky.
notion of contract, there's the formal contracts, but I think there's other. I realize this conversation is going all over the place, which is
Oh,
it's our
yeah, I know
podcast.
it's
We can do
fine.
whatever we want. Is the contracts that we have with people about like what does the contract look about the nature of our friendship or about our relationship
Uh,
and things like that are kind of an implied contract. And so does that mean that I can't talk about it because it was neither formal? Well, in that case, I've trapped myself as opposed to saying
right.
let's look at this whatever this relationship is, business, personal, whatever, and find something,
Mhm.
because if it's not working for one of us, it's not working for any of us, right?
Exactly.
So
Which is the case in the workplace
mm,
for so many people, right? It's not working for like in healthcare, it's not working for
mhm,
anybody as far as I know. Like the frontline nurses, the physicians, the administrators, the people that are paying the healthcare to do the work, nobody feels happy. Right. Nobody, well, I shouldn't say that. There are people that inside there are pockets of happiness,
yeah,
but I would say that a lot of people are super frustrated with the way that the system is clamping and the hierarchy is clamping down. And that's another thing I learned on my trip is
mm,
the impact of hierarchy, colonialism, those kinds of thinking, and seeing what that did to all these communities. And the reason
wow,
I loved Vanuatu is because they kicked out the colonizers 40 years ago. Now,
mm,
they were French and British at the same time. Can you imagine? And so they kicked them both out. And they're poor. but oh my God, they're proud.
Hmm.
And, it's really interesting. I was listening to a forum of organization of countries that are working with um, uh, climate change and looking at climate change. And at the forefront is Vanuatu.
Hmm.
It's a tiny little nation, tiny little population. So that's another metaphor. What can you do if you're motivated and you're committed and you're tiny? We're all tiny, but all of us are not tiny.
Yes. Yes. Together.
Right?
So, Helen, we started with you, first of all, letting go of many of your worldly goods and moving on to a boat. And
Yeah.
then getting on the boat and going for a 3-hour tour, like Gilligan's Island, that turned out to be 4 years, and a wide
Yeah.
variety of experiences that changed the way that you look at life and
Yeah.
work and nature, and are back now, coaching and embracing nature. We've covered a lot of territory in this conversation, and I so appreciate
6,000
your
miles.
yeah, I so appreciate your willingness to be in this conversation with me.
Absolutely, it was delightful, and it was so fun, and it wasn't, where we didn't go exactly where I expected, and I'm totally happy with it. It's great.
I know.
Thank
That's
you.
why I love not having any expectations. Let's see where this goes. So thank you so much. I've been here today with Helen Roberts on Discover Fresh Perspectives. So come on back next week and let's get some different perspectives from someone else. Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.